Hello, everyone. It's Brenda here, live at the beach. Woohoo! I have invited Kai to join with me, so we're a few minutes early. If you've come on, just hang on, because it always takes a few minutes for me to bring my co-host in. So uh, just hang with us for a minute, and we'll wait for Kai to be able to join us. I hope you're having a beautiful day. It's a beautiful day here. Here she is. She wants to be in my video. Yes, indeed. She is coming in. Yay!
Hi.
Hi. How are you? Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can. I'm trying to get my headphones. Okay, I think that's the headphone jack. Why is that not going in? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you well.
Okay, that just created a problem because my headphone jack is on the bottom of my phone.
Well, you know what I did? Like, I don't have my earbuds in right this minute, and if we don't get feedback, I'll leave it that way. But I got a splitter, because in an iPhone, or jack, the phone is kind of plug in, and so they make these splitters out one for a head, and I have my handy dandy traveling power device because I'm on the beach, and it's not compatible with that splitter.
Oh, no.
Phone is not 100% charged. I'm at about 80% or so. And if we get feedback, I'll pull it off the charger and put the headphones in, and it might last us a whole hour. We'll just have to end a few minutes early if I run out of power. But
Okay.
I know it works when I'm plugged into the wall, but it doesn't work if I'm plugged into this traveling power supply. So,
Okay.
hey, you.
Hi.
Faithful Midge, always. Oh, so it was Midge who was asking last week about, she's taking Kundalini yoga,
Uh-huh.
and so she was asking, because my guest last week, Claudia, she's a yoga instructor, but she's in the Hatha tradition, so she didn't know that much about Kundalini, and so we were, I was trying to say the little bit I know that you've told me, so that I could understand it a little bit, but I'm sure you could give us enlightenment on it. Taking a program. Um,
For me, Brenda, your sound is really cutting out, so I don't know if it's my headphones or if it's
Midge, am I cutting out for you too? I'll go to my headset.
because I have my little earbuds that I can try too, which might be
Hold on, let me
better.
put mine in, see if that takes care of it.
Okay, I'm gonna switch too.
Okay, and I think we lost Midge there, or I'm not showing anybody's with us live. So
Okay.
maybe she'll be back. Oh,
Well,
okay.
I don't know because I switched too, so but I hear you. I hear you
Okay,
well.
all right. We'll do it. I mean, my phone will warn me when the battery's getting low. I just know I have to get an hour in. I have to have a full charge.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
we might only make it 50 minutes or something, which is okay. But I'm just disappointed. I didn't test that, so I didn't realize with that external power thing. Who knows why that is incompatible with the splitter when plugging it into the wall is fine, because I did that
Oh
last
yeah.
week. Yeah,
Huh.
so I don't really get that, but whatever.
But you're in a nice
So
spot.
I'm in a beautiful spot. My favorite beach here, everybody. And it's
Oh, that's
just
awesome.
gorgeous today. It was overcast until about 3 o'clock or so, and then the sun came out, and it's just beautiful. We might even get a sunset. We haven't had a real sunset for a lot of days because it's just been very cloudy, or a lot of marine
Oh,
layer out, over the water. So I'd love just whatever you want to tell us about not, not having Midge here to be able to ask her, like, if she's who her practitioner is or whatever. She's just taking an online Kundalini yoga class. So what does that mean to you?
Well, that's actually different. I'm assuming she's probably in a Kundalini yoga class, which is in the tradition of Yogi Bhajan.
Okay.
And that's actually where I started my path, but that's
Okay.
different. That's different from what I do.
Uh-huh.
Uh,
So
so
tell us about that. Why? So let's just dive into that, because even though I've experienced what you do, including today, and we'll talk about that later.
yeah, I have my hot
I
chocolate,
always
by the
have.
way.
Oh, good. Well, and I have water because I left home at like 8:30 this morning,
Okay.
thinking I was going to go home and do cocktails and coaching from my Airbnb, and then just ended up staying out here. So I have water. Boring, but it works. It hydrates. So
I'm
yeah. So
loving my
just
hot chocolate.
yeah, I bet. I bet. So Kai, just tell us. I mean, you've been a part of the Live Lavishly private Facebook group for a while now, and you've been on several cocktails and coaching as a guest, and now you're a co-host. So tell us a little. I loved the post when you put your video up on your birthday, the worthiness video. So if
Hmm.
anybody didn't see that, go back and find that in videos, and that'll give you a great experience with Kai when she's really in the thick of her gift of giving her work to the world. But tell us how you explain what you do.
Okay, well, I will start with Kundalini because that's my journey. So, as you said in the post, I was married to a rock star. So that was my life in my early 20s.
Yes,
I dated several, I married one. But
yes.
and it was obviously a really crazy marriage, and I was attracting a lot of really crazy energy. I take full responsibility for that period of my life.
But I'm sure it had its fun moments.
It did have its fun moments.
Yes.
But out of that, I was seeing a therapist about 3 times a week. That's how insane I was. I need to see you.
Okay.
She said I was one of the only 2 people that she actually gave her bedside phone number to. Like,
Oh my gosh. That's great. That's great.
but she said, I think you should try yoga. I really think it would benefit you. And I didn't know anything about yoga. Maybe it was 23, 24.
Okay.
So I used to pass this place, it was on Beverly Boulevard all the time. And it said yoga, Yoga West. I didn't know what
Okay.
yoga to take. So I just said, okay, well, there's a place. And I just signed up. And it happened to be a Kundalini yoga place. So
Okay.
that's where I started my journey. And so this style of yoga was started by a man named Yogi Bhajan, and he has passed. But in the 60s, I think it started. And it was a little different than although I consider it really more hatha yoga, is a little
Okay.
different than the other hatha practices because of they do a lot of breathing, they do a lot of movement. It's just different, but it's still a practice where you do a set of movements from beginning to
Okay.
end, if that makes sense. So you do
Okay.
this
Yeah.
movement for a certain, like they do minutes, like you'll do a certain movement
Okay.
for a certain amount of minutes and then another one and then another one.
And the goal, is there a goal? Is the goal to awaken that energy, or is it not that straightforward?
They didn't talk about it when I was there in that
Okay.
way. Uh,
Okay.
I think now because so many people's Kundalini is spontaneously awakening now. So this was,
Yeah.
I'm 50 now, 51. This was when I was like 24.
Yeah. So this is,
There's been
yeah.
a huge evolution during that
Yes.
time period. Now
Yes.
people are getting these spontaneous awakenings.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, I think now in the Kundalini classes, people are much more aware of that process of the Kundalini
Yeah.
awakening.
Yeah. Yeah.
At the time, it wasn't talked about a whole lot, and I didn't really know
Mm-hmm.
much about the Kundalini. So, but I always had this urge to know. I wanted to know where Yogi Bhajan learned this. Where did you learn these moves? Where did you? And everybody just kept saying some secret cave yogi in India. I was like, well, who?
Okay.
Who's the cave yogi? I want to go see him.
I want to know. Oh, here's
I
Teresa Kelly.
Hi, Teresa.
Hello. So glad you're here. And Midge, if you get back in, feel free to, and Teresa too, ask any questions you want as we go. But anyway, okay, Kai, keep going with your story.
So as a result of that questioning, I actually went through, I was at that yoga studio 3 times a day during my divorce. It was insane. You know,
Three
ex-husband
times a
was,
day?
yes, because ex-husband was showing up at my apartment at 3 a.m. in his Porsche, coming home from partying, and I was going to yoga. It was this
Yeah.
insane
Yeah.
scene.
Yeah. Okay.
So yes, I just needed that for my sanity. Really,
Yes.
I was going 3 times a day. So
Yeah.
out of that, it finally got to the point where people were like, he's going to pull an OJ on you. It was that
Yeah.
time period, you know,
Yeah.
and you got to
Yeah.
get out of LA. So I left.
Okay.
I left
Okay.
LA and I went to Nashville. I had a sister living in Nashville and I moved in with my sister and I was looking for a Kundalini yoga class and I couldn't find one. So she had this magazine, this like New Age magazine. She said, here's something that says Kundalini. I don't know what it is, you know.
Here's the word.
So I'm like, okay, I'll go. And that's when I
Uh-huh.
walked into the ashram with my ex-guru who awakened my Kundalini. So this was
Okay.
the real tradition of Shaktipat Guru, Kundalini awakening. Very different.
Okay.
It's a very
Okay.
different thing. So I
Okay.
walked in and people were getting, you know, you've probably seen this at Dr. Joe's workshops. If people have been to Dr. Joe's workshops, you see people with this spontaneous energy moving. And it's
Hmm.
the same thing. So when the energy starts moving, you start having what are called kriyas and all these different manifestations of the energy, which can look like yelling or breathing or even turning into animals. All kinds of things happen, and that's the manifestation of the divine coming through you and purifying your system to bring you
Okay.
to ultimately to enlightenment.
Okay.
So the
And in
minute,
that tradition, sorry to interrupt you, but this is a really fascinating topic to me right now, is what is enlightenment? In that, in the way, either if it's different, tell us how it's different for you personally versus that tradition. But what is enlightenment? What does that really mean?
enlightenment,
Yeah.
I'm going to tune in for that one. Do you want that right now?
Yeah,
You
I'd
want
love that right now. Here she goes, Grace.
Well, yeah, because you know,
So,
that is the subject of like an entire magazine. You know, what is
yes.
enlightenment? Like that's a
Right,
big,
right. Like, what does that really mean? What does it
what
really
does that
mean?
really mean? And I
And does
think,
it come and go? You know, can you be enlightened? Is it a permanent state of being that once you get there, you're there? Or is
hmm
it more, you know, like Byron Katie kind of says, like when, of course, I'm not quoting her, I'm going to probably totally bastardize the way she says this, but it's like, okay, so once you get freedom on a thought that's been causing you stress, you are enlightened right then. You are enlightened from that right then. It doesn't mean it will never come up again and you won't have to work through it again. but
right.
in but that's kind of the way she describes it, whereas in my mind I used to think of it as just a like, well, once you get there you are forever almost not human. You know, you've transcended to the point where you're not really having what the rest of us would consider a normal human experience, which is the way Byron Katie lives and Eckhart Tolle and probably Kai Shanti and a few others that are alive in our time.
Right.
Um, but so yeah, so what is your what's
Well,
your
from
sense
my
on?
perspective, enlightenment comes from a place deep inside you where you know the truth, right? You just know the truth. And what is the truth?
Mm-hmm.
Your absolute divinity, your truth, but it's your absolute knowingness. So you get to a space where it's absolute, it's pure, it's free,
Mm-hmm.
and that never leaves. Once you get to that space, that never leaves. That doesn't mean you're not going to have ups and downs and mishaps in the world, but it does mean that you're permanently placed in the truth. You're permanently in touch with that inner divine essence. Does that make
Oh,
sense?
okay, yes. And so I love Teresa's comment here that she describes it as being when you are more energy than matter. So I love that. Hey, Chelsea. I can't believe Chelsea Sanders is here. Chelsea is the fabulous photographer that any photo you've ever seen of me professionally taken in the last 5 years, the
Oh,
stuff on my website, the stuff from Paris, the black dress with the blue background that everybody
oh,
loves so much. Chelsea took all of those pictures. She's the most amazing photographer and an
Oh,
amazing human being. And I miss you, sweetie. I miss you. We really need to catch up. It's been since before Christmas that you and I had our last conversation, Chelsea. Yeah.
wow, you really caught Brenda's essence, Chelsea. That's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah, she really does, and everybody she photographs, and just has such a amazing heart. I mean, she's a great creator and a great businesswoman, and um, just a great human being. And so I'm so happy you're here. Um, oh, thank you, Teresa. Okay, so I'm going to put myself on the hot seat here. Okay.
Okay.
And I want you, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart, because I mean, earlier today, Kai went through it with me. Okay, I've had a very difficult couple of days, and I don't say that so you can feel sorry for me or whatever. I'm just telling you the truth. It's been brutal emotionally for me, and so I reached out to Kai because that's what I do, and um, she took me to the place as she beautifully does, where I could tap back. As here's how I'm going to say it, Kai. I tapped back into that place in myself that is the divine, that is where there's no separation from me and the divine and the truth, and it's just all that oneness. And so that's where the real freedom is. Okay. So today I was desperately seeking freedom. I wasn't feeling free at all. I was feeling incredibly just trapped and limited, and kind of that there's no way out. There's no, that hopelessness and despair of that. And of course, struggle as it was for me to get there, she stuck with me until I got there and could experience that. And I did a Facebook Live right before we went live here about it for the 100 days of living orgasmically. It's a freedom. So when I can get there, it's a freedom that transcends circumstance. Okay. So we all have circumstances that we feel like, whatever, take our joy or take our happiness, or we feel trapped in, or, whatever. And what I've been seeking deeply for many, many months is a freedom and that connection to source that transcends all of that. But based on the way you just described it, Kai, enlightenment, and of course I've never described myself as an enlightened being. I guess what you're saying, so what I would say is that I can find it and then I lose it, and I can find it and stay in it sometimes now, usually now for like weeks, 3, 4, 5 weeks, and then something happens and I lose it, and I need the help of somebody like you, just like people come to me for coaching. They need somebody else to help them get there, right? We all need somebody else sometimes to help us get there. You help get me back there. So how is that? How do you put that process that I'm doing and that you see me doing, or would you describe it differently? And I'm not looking for accolades, and I don't care, like, just be truthful about that, right? We're just going to use me as the petri dish.
Okay. Well, what you experienced today was deep. You know, it was deep. So, how many people are able to really go to that space within themselves that you delved into today? Think about
Yeah,
that.
I don't probably,
So,
definitely a minority. But
yeah.
I can't hold on to it. I mean, again, I can hold on to it for a long time sometimes, but I can't do it the way you've described it, where like when I'm there, it feels so real, and I feel like, oh, this is so it. I, how could I ever, I'm forever changed, and I'm never going to forget this. And then, whatever the heat of life will, I'll stray back away from it.
Well, here's the thing.
Okay.
Ultimately, we're all divine, right? That's
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
basis. We're all divine.
Yeah.
So, ultimately, we're all enlightened, right?
Oh, I'm trying to get somewhere,
So, if we're already enlightened,
which is so like me,
because
right?
we're already
Let's do it.
divine,
Uh-huh.
There's nowhere to get to.
Yeah. Yeah.
All there is to be. But the consciousness that allows you to see that isn't going to it's not going to let you see that so easily because we have so much stuff coming in from us, you know? So like if you look at your session today, there was this and this and this and this and this, but you've broken through so much of that that you didn't have to spend the whole session on looking at this one or this one or this one or this one or this one. You were able to just
Okay.
kind of dive into it and go, oh, yes, that's who I am, because you already know that all the rest of that isn't real. So you were able to grasp it more easily. But it was
Yeah.
kind of that last deep dive or that last dig past
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Okay. Because I do think so. To me, and I would love to hear what your process was, because maybe yours was more sudden and in all enveloping. Because I've never asked you this, even in our friendship, like we've never talked about it this way. Do you see yourself like I'm kind of something similar to the way I'm describing myself as coming in and out, or or do you live in that place all the time?
Oh, that's a really good question because that's a lot of my contemplation right now. It really is
Yeah.
because I think I told you when I turned 51 just a few weeks ago,
Yeah.
something really snapped in me. So I've been living these teachings for half my life,
Mm-hmm.
but so much of my life is lived in turmoil.
Yes, fucking turmoil.
Right? So I've been having the teachings here because I do this quote unquote channeling where the Shakti comes through and she awakens people and does this whole thing. So I'm living half my life in that space and I'm living half my life in turmoil. And that's been since I was 27. And of course, it used to be much more turmoil, coming out of the life that I was coming out of.
Right, right.
But all of a sudden, something about my 51st birthday, something
Yeah.
snapped in me and went, that's not who I am. That's not who I am.
Ah.
I'm not going to describe that as enlightenment or an enlightened state. I'm just going to say that the realization finally came that that's not who I am.
Okay.
It
Okay.
just snapped. It was just like, oh shit, now it's time to do your
Yes.
work. Like now it's really time to
Yes.
do your work.
Yes. Yes. And so one of the distinctions I think is really interesting about the way and we're using the word channeling because it's just a word that people now at least understand for the most part, where,
That's why I
you
use
know,
it.
that is purely coming through you. But you're very, as a person, as Kai, as a human being, Kai, you're also very aware of what's going on. Am I right? When you're working, like when you're channeling higher consciousness, is what I call it. In my session, you know what's going on. Whereas some channelers I've worked with, when they're channeling, their person is very out of it, and they don't really remember what's going on when
Hmm.
it's over.
The way that's described in this tradition, I was just reading an article about this, is that sometimes a consciousness, a physical consciousness, isn't capable of taking on that much energy.
Okay.
So you have to be able to raise your vibration to such a level where you can actually come into union with the energy that's coming through.
Okay.
So the ultimate, obviously, since we are all divine, the ultimate union is just becoming that. It's just
Yes.
becoming that and just recognizing that I'm not really channeling anything. I am that.
Yes. 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 Yes.
But because for so long I was so embroiled in the worldly life, I had to see it as a separate energy coming through.
Yes.
But I think what's happening is the veil is getting thinner and thinner. And I'm just going, oh, yeah, well, this is just who I am because this is who we all are. We're all divine.
Yes.
And suddenly I see that everybody's divine, like I was
Yes.
just seeing that.
Yes. Well, and it's so funny because that's really part in a very different way, but as far as message, that's a lot of what happened in my session, where I was coming in with a lot of self-judgment. And then as you're working with, I mean, not that I was saying it that way, but that's what was happening, you
Hmm.
know? And so then you turn it onto other people. Would you judge this person if they were doing that, or that person if they were doing it? And I'm like, well, no, of course not, right?
Right.
So then I see how I have imprisoned myself, right? How I have oppressed myself. And so in the same way that in those moments that I feel that I don't just feel it. I'm living the reality of my oneness with source. And my circumstances are real. It's not like I'm in la la land or something, but they're also not the most important thing happening for me. Okay? When I'm out of it, when I'm separate, then my circumstances are like the most important thing happening because I've lost that truth of who I am. Does that
Hmm.
does that make sense?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think today, and I love what Teresa has said here. So Teresa said, whenever you're not separate, you're there in the enlightened place. And I think that is so true, Teresa. And I know you just got back from the Dr. Joe retreat in Portland, which looked like it was just
Mm,
amazing.
yay.
But you're so right. When I'm in that place, and of course I don't go, oh, I feel so enlightened, because there's something kind of weird about that. But that would be if I wanted to be objective and try to describe it, that is how it feels. My understanding of enlightenment is that's how it feels, because I'm not just free from my circumstances, good or bad, because right, it cuts both ways. I'm not overly proud, or whatever you would say, of the good things, because it's all just part of this life. And and so it's not just that the things that when I'm not there I'm judging myself for lose their judgment. It's the positive things I also don't take a bow for. I don't know if I expressed that well. Do
Yeah,
you
and
know
I
what I
think
mean?
that I think it's a really good thing to bring up because we all have the tendency to judge ourselves and to not
Yeah,
allow ourselves to be who we truly are.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
easier to judge. It's easier to say I'm bad. It's easier to say I'm a sinner. It's easier to say I'm not doing it right
because we've
than to
all been
say
taught
I'm
that.
this perfect,
Yeah,
divine, amazing being of light, you know?
yes, yes. And when you're really there, when I'm really in that goddess, my sort of goddess alter ego, or true self is a better way to say it, is Aphrodite, because she's the goddess of love, and that's just how I feel. And she's sensual, and um, you know, I just really resonate with her. And when I'm in that place, I'm not like all la di ta ta. I'm Aphrodite, right? I mean, it's not that kind of energy, but there's no diminishment of the power that Aphrodite is either,
Hmm.
right? She just
Yes.
is. She just is, and she's formidable, and she doesn't apologize for it, and there's no arrogance in it. It's just a being, and I love being there. And it's funny that you describe the way you described your experience as you were turning 51. I think as I have um, kind of recovered, or allowed myself to recover, I don't know what else to call it, from our session today, because when we go that deep, like it's it's like knocks me out for hours.
Hmm.
Not like, well, sometimes I actually like really have to go to sleep. It knocks me out that way. Today it was just almost like, and this happens to me when I'm in deep meditation. Teresa, I'm sure you've experienced it at a Dr. Joe event, and I'm sure at home too, and anybody else who does a lot of meditation, where even when you quote unquote come out of it, like the meditation's over and maybe you go lay down or whatever, it's almost like you're out of your body or something. Like it's just a very ethereal sort of experience, where, and maybe it's to what your point or your description, Teresa, it is feeling like more energy than matter. And so my body itself feels a little like loosey goosey or something, because I think that I'm more uh, uh, I'm resonating more with the energy of me than the
Mm.
matter of me.
Mm.
And so it's taken me, like, I just decided when our session was over, I'm not trying to do any work today. I had, we had this time together tonight, which I was sure would be, restorative and good for me. But I haven't done jack shit all day except sit on this beach and walk and spend a little time with my daughter and granddaughter, because I just needed to love myself back into life. Like, I brutalized myself for 3 days, and it was just time to love myself back into life.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, today's session was so intense and so deep
Yeah.
that I wouldn't be surprised if you didn't feel like that for a few days.
Okay. I
You
have a lot of
know,
work to do before Saturday, so I hope I can get a little bit
or
done. But
not.
but
But
yeah,
I'm just
or not.
saying,
But yeah, but no, I know, and I think I keep interrupting myself. The other thing I want to say is I think that I started to feel a little bit of that, like, wait, I think this is who I really am. That other part isn't really who I am. The turmoil and the judgment and the oppressive me that I was raised and conditioned to, just, yeah, just kind of feeling that, I guess, whether it's a dropping or a thinning maybe of the veil between that and who I am. Because I accused myself in the last couple of days of being a hypocrite, that I should definitely quit coaching, um, because
yeah,
how
that's
could I
all part
possibly,
of it. That's all part of
yeah,
what that voice does, right?
how could I possibly do this work when, this and that in my life isn't the way I think it should be? And even in my, despair and terrible self-oppression, there was this part of me that was like, but wait, when I'm showing up, whether it's in our, 5 minutes in a living orgasmically video, or one of these, or I'm with a client coaching, I'm never faking it. I
Mm.
am never faking it. I am this part of me, even if I were to hang up and go cry or whatever, this is real. So it's almost like, yeah, this sounds sort of schizophrenic, I suppose, but yeah, it's almost like I'm living some moments from that older state of being, and a lot of moments from the new state of being, from that becoming, right? Who am I becoming? Which I love that expression. Um, and I'm there most of the time, but I'll tell you what, the old self slapped me in the, you know, wazoo the other day.
Yeah. And I mean, like we were talking about Jesus's time in the desert,
Yeah.
He was not spared that angst,
Yeah.
especially he was not spared that
Angst is a
angst.
great
Oh
word.
my God, what he had to go through,
Yeah.
to bring himself into that state, into that
Yeah.
space,
And
so that
I
he
interpret,
could go
keep
ahead.
going. Sorry. Keep going.
I was going to
No, no,
say
no.
so
You
that
keep going.
he could bear the burden of humanity's depression. And by what I mean by depression is depression.
Yeah.
Um,
That separateness.
he had to go through it. He had to go through
Yeah.
it, the
Yeah.
full experience of it.
So tell me, for those of you who are on here live, like, what is this like? What questions do you have for Kai? Do you relate to these experiences, that we're talking about? Like, that self-oppressing, self-judging thing that just drives a wedge between you and the truth of who you are, and I mean, I think that's pretty universal, and we could probably all relate to that. But I'd love to hear from some of you live. And if you're watching the replay, still put your comments and questions in, because I always watch the feeds to see what gets added or brought up after, we're done being live, because we love to continue the engagement. And this is just a really, deep and meaningful topic, because ultimately we can't live lavishly or live orgasmically or whatever word you want to put on it without this connection. Otherwise, it just comes and goes, right? With the whims of, usually the whims of circumstances,
And
oh,
like
I'm
we
in a,
said, The freedom. Without the freedom, you can't live
Yeah.
orgasmically and lavishly. Oh my God. You got to be
No.
free to have that.
And you've got to be able to be free beyond your circumstances,
Mm-hmm.
you know? And that's what, that's what you helped me reconnect to today, is that I am not my circumstances, you know,
Yeah.
any more than we think of Buddha or, Jesus or Byron Katie or any of the sort of enlightened masters. Uh, I mean, many of them had great times of poverty and um, oppression from others, politically or in other ways, and, very difficult times. But we don't look at them and go, oh my God, they were so fucked up. Why didn't they just go get a job? Just go get a job, for the love of God,
Would have changed
Stop
history
it.
a bit.
Yeah, yeah, you know. So,
And that's exactly what Buddha walked away from. He walked away from the palace. He was the
yes,
prince, you know?
yes, and
He walked
walked
away from
away.
all of that
Yeah.
to find
Here,
freedom.
yes, yes. And I guess, in truth, like, how do you know until you're tested? Like, you don't know until, can I feel abundant when I don't have a ton of money? Well, I don't know if my bank account's always full of money. Or can I feel healthy when I've never had anything? Like, that's, the way it is for me. Like, I feel so healthy and I'm so confident about my health and da 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 da. But I've also never had anything go wrong with my health. So,
Right.
like, that's easy to feel healthy from there, right? I don't wake up in pain. My friend Radrani, lives in this level
Yes.
5 to 7
I
pain almost every
know.
day. And I can't even
Oh,
imagine it. I don't even know what that's like.
I
So,
know.
okay, Teresa says, when I have an opportunity to worry and I just don't, I later know I was basking in the divine. That is so good. Yes. And
Yeah.
isn't it funny? I so relate to that, how sometimes, well, I think a lot for me, I don't notice it or think about it that way in the moment. It's in hindsight. I'm like, oh, hey, actually, like this, and that happened. And I was just feeling totally free and empowered and awesome. Okay, there you go. I'm getting somewhere,
Yes.
you know. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that, Teresa. And our friend Rudrani, who we all, Teresa knows her as well, and Kai and I, and we all love her because you can't even come close to knowing her and not love her. Sent me. She's been um, in North Carolina, or not North Carolina, Pennsylvania and New Jersey with Scott and Em and Simon for the last several days. And she sent me a video of her doing the walking meditation on a beach.
I
And
got that.
she was, did you get that? She was like
Yeah,
positively prancing down the
she
beach.
was.
And I'm just like, oh my gosh. And that is the energy. I mean, that's the way and you can please describe this differently if you want, because yours would be more accurate, but I'm sure. But to me, that's the energy of the divine. In that moment, the she's just so one with the energy of the divine. Like in Teresa, Teresa, I'm gonna incorporate your, she's less matter. And so instead of feeling all this back pain and barely being able to walk, she's elevated to prancing down the beach. And a beach isn't the easiest place to walk because it was sandy. It wasn't hard. She wasn't down by the water. And so that's how I see that. Like, she just, in that those moments, minutes, however long it lasted, she transcended all of that matter, that heavy matter energy, and she was just that divine, her divine self.
And she slips into that so easily too. She's such a
Yeah,
beautiful soul.
yeah. All right,
Yeah.
Teresa, here, hold on. I'm going to open up your comment. Oh, come on, Facebook. Oh. Can you see the comments, Kai?
Oh, I probably could if I had my glasses on. Let me see.
I can see part of it, Teresa. I've just had, the see more thing isn't working for me. I know that when I'm judging someone else, I'm giving myself permission to judge me. Oh, totally. which I usually do. Yes, yes. I mean, I think so many
Yeah.
of us are so much harder on
Yeah.
ourselves than we are other people. So if I catch myself, can you see him now? Oh, there it goes. Oh no. Yes. Oh, there it goes. Okay, I got it. Phew. Okay, so if I catch myself judging someone else, I try to find the love and appreciate that this person is just being a test for me to see the love.
Hmm.
Yes, it's that mirror. It is that mirror.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I
And
love that. You said that beautifully, Teresa, and I agree with
so
you.
when
Rajani is
I
the
find
best.
myself doing that, I immediately go to, oh, where did that program pop in?
Yeah, yeah,
I just stop. I stop. Like if I'm at the gym and I see somebody and I judge them for whatever, I
right.
literally close my eyes on whatever machine I'm in and I just go in and I go, where's that program? Which person did it come from? Okay, we're gonna clear it out right now. Like I just,
Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I love it when I can catch myself that fast. Um, Especially, one of the things that Martha Beck has been saying, at least for a few years, um, is the truth is never stressful, and stress is never the truth.
hmm.
And I find that to be so deeply true. Now, it is also true that Sunday, for some reason that I cannot explain, I lost that entirely. And I couldn't re-find it. Like sometimes I can do it fast, and something's, I pick up on some really negative, self-critical, judgmental thought I'm having, um, or just a fight with reality, right? I should have more money. I should have, I should be settled in a home by now, whatever. Like Byron Katie always says, if the, sorry, um, if the thought is stressful, those are the thoughts you work on, because, and that's where, and Byron Katie and Martha are great friends. And that's, I know where Martha came up with that phrase is from, she's channeling her Byron Katie, because the truth can be like whatever we want to call difficult or whatever. Like Byron Katie was going blind for a while, and it doesn't mean that everything's coming up roses, but the things she tells herself about it are not stressful. They're loving and kind and compassionate.
Hmm.
And when I drop into my place of self-judgment, then I'm thinking thoughts that are very stressful to me. And sometimes I can catch myself in it and be like, oh, up, 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 not true, not true, or it wouldn't feel like this, I wouldn't be stressed. Um, and then, sometimes I get sucked into it, this time for 3 days. Um,
But do you see that
so,
is such a deep understanding where you were quote unquote sucked into it? That itself is the divine because that brought you to the place you needed to get to
right,
completely open up.
right. Yes, yes.
So sometimes we have to get so desperate. Like I was thinking about that after our session today, actually at the gym. I do a lot of thinking at the gym.
Yeah,
What were those moments in my life where I was just so, there was nothing that was going to save me? Nothing,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And one was this random guy broke up with me. It wasn't like it was this famous actor I was dating 3 months. For some reason, that put me into the deepest despair. And then the other was when I lost my baby.
Mm,
And I was like, oh, those were two moments that popped up for me where there's nothing that was going to save me from those moments. I
yeah,
had to go
yeah,
that deep. I had to experience that.
yeah,
I had to have that feeling.
yeah.
And it was both with losing the baby, it was physical and emotional because I had to go through the physical pain of actually, because it was like almost 4 months. I had to go through the physical pain of
Oh,
birthing
oh,
and then the emotional pain of having lost it. So it's like there's
yeah,
nothing that could save me.
yeah,
But those are the moments that are so freeing.
yeah. Isn't that the truth? I mean, I know that that's true. It's, you know, being in it is whatever kind of not fun it is. I mean, until you get to the point where when you're in it, you can transcend it in real time, I guess. Maybe then it feels differently. I don't know, because I haven't gotten there. Um, but it's true. I mean, there's no question that the depth of, these experiences in my last year, especially, I've just had a really intense year, a pretty damn intense 2 years, but a really intense year. Um, they, they are, they are the gift. They are the liberators.
You might be too close to it. Like those for
Yeah,
me were like, I have a lot of distance. I have a lot of
yeah,
years between,
yeah. But I no, but
you
I
know.
can no. I mean, yeah. Sometimes I'm pissed about that. You know that. Like sometimes I get really angry at Kai in our sessions because she's like telling me, lovely things about how, oh, this is just short term and this is making you who you are and all. And I'm just like, fuck you. I just want out. But it is true, even with as little hindsight as I have, like there's a part of me that just knows that that is absolutely true, that is absolutely true, that this is part of my becoming and why it needs to be this way or, whatever. That's the rhetorical question that, never gets answered for anybody, why any of us has the exact paths that we do. Some people lose. I have my son-in-law has had so much death and loss in his family. People just dying very young on, his mom's side, his dad's side, just like everywhere. He lost his brother, like just so much death, really untimely death in his family. And I just look at that and I'm like, wow. Like I have none of that, a few old
Hmm.
grandparents that died, you know? And so there's no, I don't know why, who the hell knows why any of us have the path that we have. Oops, I'm having to go on low power mode, so we're going to have to wrap it up here in a minute.
Okay.
Um, but I do feel the truth of what you're saying, Kai. I feel the truth of this path that I'm on is taking me to that ultimate liberation where I absolutely always know who I really am, who I really, really am, which is that truth and that divinity and that grace.
Yeah, because I think that once we experience that depth, there's no going back.
Yeah,
You can't go
yeah.
back through that hole. You've gone, you know what I mean?
Yes, yes. That was a sort of twisted sister of my experience the last few days is that I know that, right? Like I said to Kai, like I've gone far enough. I know I can't go back. So when I dropped into self judgment and despair, then it just feels like, well, then there's nowhere to go. Because I know I can't go back, but I can't stand being where I am, and I just felt so trapped. Is sort of the nutshell of what where that came from over the last few days, because I have absolutely gone far enough that I cannot go back. I can never go back to being and thinking the way I used to be. I can hardly remember who I used to be, and
And so
that
then,
may sound strange, but really, truly, like if you were to say, well, yeah, like 3 years ago, who were you? It'd take me a minute to even come up with what my life was because my life was so different. But who was I? I don't know. I can't relate to her anymore.
yeah, I know.
Yeah, yeah. It's a beautiful undoing, isn't it?
Oh, I think it's gorgeous. I love it. I love it. And then the other aspect is we can't plunge in with other people until we've taken the plunge ourselves.
Yes, 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 yes. Yeah, so ultimately, I know, I mean, even when I was mad part of the time, this morning in our session, I was like, damn it, this is going to really help me work with people because you just you just lose that judgment, you lose that even seeing someone else as separate, right? And so when somebody else, the way you see me in my divinity, it helps me see myself in my divinity. You know, you are that mirror for me, and I want to
Yes.
be that for, you know, for my clients. And yes, Teresa, I so agree. It's really hard, and I'm a perfectionist, and I'm very hard on I'm very self-demanding, and it's very hard to understand sometimes that it's not all, that it is all perfect, even in the dark nights, that is part of it. You know, are these places that take us back to, like Dr. Joe, I've heard him say, like, you just get reborn again and again,
Mm-hmm.
you know, to that next highest version of yourself. Yeah, yeah.
Well, I
And
feel
that
like
is,
you're there, Brenda. That's my feeling.
well, thank you, dear. Thank you, dear.
And I really
um,
enjoyed our session today, and I enjoyed this conversation.
Yeah, yeah, this has been great. So thank you. This has been really deep, because where else could I be tonight after the day
Right.
and the few days? And that's what living lavishly is about, right? It's being real, and it's why I call it cocktails and coaching, because sometimes I'm a lot more lighthearted, or I don't even know if that's the right word, but you know, um, it doesn't have to always be that deep or whatever you want to say. But sometimes it is, and wherever it is, that's where we need to be,
Right.
because that's the reality, you know, of this life, of this experience, this expression of the divine. And we're all different, and we all do it differently,
Absolutely.
because she is unlimited in her facets, and each of us is just an expression of that.
Yes.
Yeah, yeah. All right, everybody. Well, I love you. Thank you, Teresa, for hanging in with us here till the end. I think you're the only one that
Yes.
maybe made
Thanks,
it to the
Teresa.
end live, but thank you. And thank you, Kai, and more to come. Kai and Rudrani and I are working on something fun that hopefully in the next month or two will come into life in a way that we can share it with everybody. But it is such a privilege and a joy for me to have you with me, Kai, and to be part of this community of Live Lavishly, where, you know, we're all seeking that divinity within ourselves and that truth within ourselves.
Yeah,
So
each in
thank
our
you,
own
everybody.
beautiful way. That's what I love. Each in
Yes,
our own beautiful
everybody
way.
in their own beautiful way. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Wonderful.
I love
Love you
you.
guys.
I love
See
you.
you soon.
Thank you.
Bye.